Okay. So we'll start with this quote. So you can't build a pyramid without a foundation, and that's exactly what we're going to go through today is the foundational elements of nutrition that include nutrition essentials, food sensitivities, nutrition tracking, and then at the end we'll go through some strategies for meal planning, so how you can put all of this together. But we always want to start obviously with the essentials. That's going to give you the base information that you need for how to break all this information down. So nutrition and essentials, we're going to touch on macronutrients, micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals. Macronutrients are your protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Calories and how that it breaks down as a unit of energy. Sources of foods, so going through like whole food, single ingredients, organic and fresh versus processed, refined, stabilized, and packaged. And then nutritional timing, so when food is being consumed and how that occurs in relation to the day or activities that you're doing specifically. So macronutrients, we're looking at, we want this to be generally with each meal, we want to consume all three macronutrients. There are times when we might be a bit more specific and lean more heavily on one macronutrient versus another, but a great starting point is to have all three with each meal. So it's going to be proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And by the end of the day, we want to consume an appropriate amount for your physical makeup. So this is where it starts to become individualized. And some popular diets that we hear a lot about lean on a balance of macronutrients. Some of these are like a Mediterranean diet or a paleo diet. That is a balanced approach to these macronutrients versus something that's more hyper specific. So something like keto or Atkins, where they're actually manipulating the ratio of macronutrients to serve either like high fat, low carb, or a low protein diet. So the three main, sorry, we'll go back here one. The three main classes of nutrients that provide the body with energy and are required in relatively large amounts for optimal function. This is, sorry, micronutrients now. So these are your vitamins and minerals that are essential for body function, and getting an adequate amount each day is important. Most vitamins and minerals can be achieved through balanced eating and includes lots of vegetables and fruits. And when we are lacking sources of vitamins and minerals, it's common to resort to supplementation. And when we need higher doses for food that would be high in certain vitamins and minerals are hard to find in sources. So mostly what I'm trying to say with these is that if we have a good balanced approach to our nutrition, we'll get a lot of the vitamins and minerals that we need. So back to the page before, we're talking about carbohydrates. So these are a group of organic compounds made up of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens. They are the body's primary source of energy. They play a crucial role in fueling various bodily functions, include brain function and physical activity. Proteins are complex molecules composed of amino acids. So you may have heard of products like branched chain amino acids. It's basically just the protein at its root source. And they play a vital role in building and repairing tissues, supporting the immune system, producing enzymes and hormones, and serving as a source of energy when carbohydrates and fats are insufficient. Fats, also known as lipids, are a concentrated source of energy and serve several important functions of the body. They provide insulation, cushioning for the organs, they support hormone production, and they aid in the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and contribute to the structure of cell membranes. So this may not be the most important thing for you, but as we go through more of the information, you're going to start to understand why all these things are important to have and have balance of them in your sort of day-to-day nutrition intake. So what are the essentials of nutrition? So Now we're breaking down into calories. So calories are a unit of energy. They measure the energy content of food and the expenditure of energy through activity, and they represent the heat required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. This could start to make a calorie confusing, right? When we think about, throwing calorie units on everything from unit of energy to the energy content of food to the energy that we're using and using during activity. We want to have a more clear breakdown of this, and a good sort of line to break these things up is that a calorie consumed and a calorie burned through exercise are not equal. So when it comes to weight management, the idea of calorie in, calorie out suggests that if you consume fewer calories than you burn, then you will lose weight and vice versa. So however, the body's energy balance is not as simple as a direct calorie for calorie exchange. The body processes and uses calories for different macronutrients, so carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, again, differently. And each macronutrient has varying effects on satiety, metabolism, and hormonal response, which can impact energy expenditure and weight regulation. The body's metabolic rate can be influenced by factors such as age, sex, genetics, muscle mass, and overall health. Some individuals may have a higher metabolic rate, meaning they burn more calories at rest, while others may have a lower metabolic rate. The efficiency of the body's energy utilization can vary. So, for example, some studies suggest that the body may adapt to changes in calorie intake by adjusting its metabolic rate or conserving energy, and can make weight loss more challenging over time for some people. Exercise also has an effect on energy expenditure, as we know, but the number of calories burned during exercise can vary based on factors like the intensity of the workout, the duration of the workout, and the individual's fitness level. Additionally, exercise can have other benefits beyond calorie burning. I think that's pretty obvious, but such as, improving your cardiovascular health, building muscle, and enhancing your overall health and fitness. So while calories consumed and calories burned through exercise are both measurements of energy, they do not have an exact one-to-one relationship. And due to that complexity of metabolism, energy utilization, and individual variation, it's not an easy equation to put one for the other. So I hear people a lot of the time, they'll say like, in my workout, I burn 230 calories, so then I can eat 230 calories worth of food. So just to break that down a little bit more, obviously it's not an approach we want to take. As we go through more of this material, it's going to become more and more clear where we want to spend our focus. So the sources of food are important as well. So obviously the sources of food you want to eat are going to have a big impact on your health and performance. With all of my clients, what I try to focus on with them is making this shift towards whole foods, single ingredient foods, organic when we can. Fresh foods are going to have the highest concentration of nutrients that will impact your well-being while avoiding additional ingredients that may be harmful for you or to you. We'll see more of that later. And then other foods that are processed, refined, stabilized, packaged, modified, and contain low value ingredients, meaning that they have just a low concentration of nutrients in general, and carrying additional ingredients that tend to be harmful for your well-being. So when you look at those packaged goods and they've got that big long list of ingredients in the back, most of the time those ingredients are not actually going to benefit you. And then in this essential section, last thing we're talking about is timing. So timing refers to when you're consuming your food. So there may be different strategies for this depending on your goals or the activities that you're doing. I would say like a classic timing example would be something like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that would be where you're consuming food in the morning, midday, and in the evening. For more specific things like around training or competition, we may have something called like pre-workout and intra-workout, which is food that you would take during the workout to help improve performance. Post-workout foods, which are going to help with recovery, and this could be food or drinks that we consume to improve performance. So different types of fasting would even fall into this category of timing, since it impacts when nutrients are consumed in what we call like a feeding window. Okay, next we're going to go into some food sensitivities. So the most common food sensitivities that we see, and some of these we may not necessarily consider sensitivities, but they tend to have a more negative impact on the body than we necessarily would like to have for high fitness and health. So we'll go through each of these, but gluten intolerance all the way up to celiac disease, lactose intolerance, FODMAP intolerance, alcohol, refined or added sugars, and multiple ingredient foods, which you kind of touched on with these long lists of ingredients. So let's go through first gluten intolerance or celiac disease. This refers to a condition in which individuals have difficulty digesting gluten. That seems obvious. Protein that is found in wheat, barley, and rye. Celiac disease is an autoimmune disorder characterized by severe gluten intolerance. So consuming gluten can trigger an immune response in people with celiac disease, leading to damage in the small intestine and various symptoms such as abdominal pain, bloating, diarrhea, and fatigue, all things that may reduce someone's overall health, fitness, and performance. The next one is lactose intolerance. So lactose intolerance is the inability to fully digest lactose, which is a sugar that is found in milk and dairy products. It occurs when the body doesn't produce enough lactase, the enzyme which is responsible for breaking down lactose. Symptoms of lactose intolerance include bloating, abdominal pain, diarrhea, gas after consuming lactose-containing foods. And then the next one on this list is the FODMAP intolerance. So this stands for a bunch of very scientific words: fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. FODMAPs are a group of carbohydrates that are not easily absorbed by some people, leading to digestive symptoms. So common high FODMAP foods include certain fruits such as apples and pears, wheat products, onions, garlic, legumes, and some dairy products. So some individuals will, with irritable bowel syndrome, find relief from their symptoms by following a low FODMAP diet. So it's important to note that these food sensitivities and intolerances are different from food allergies. Food allergies involve an immune system response to certain proteins in foods, which can lead to severe or life-threatening reactions. So think about like a peanut allergy. Food sensitivities and intolerances, on the other hand, are typically involve milder digestive symptoms and are not life-threatening, but there is a response happening in the body, which is taking energy in order to combat that. So next on there, alcohol. I think everyone's quite aware of this. These sort of side effects of alcohol include things like liver damage, increased risk of chronic disease, impaired cognitive function, and mental health, negative aspects on sleep, to name a few. And I would consider these more like domino effect sensitivities, where consuming alcohol has a sort of more long-term domino effect of how it's affecting your health, fitness, and performance. Same goes with sugars. The domino effect of potential weight gain or obesity, increased risk of type 2 diabetes, negative impacts on heart health, increased risk of chronic disease, and nutrient deficiencies. And then multiple ingredient foods tend to have low concentrations of nutrients and tend to use low quality ingredients to increase shelf life, flavor, or improve the appearance of a food. And typically what we're going to see here is like these are also foods or ingredients in the multiple ingredient foods that are creating a response that is responding to inflammation or immune responses to help break these foods down more easily. And that, again, takes away energy from your health, fitness, and performance. So having a better understanding of your sensitivities to any of these will get you to improve your well-being faster by reducing and eliminating where it is needed. So the better you understand if you have any of these or which ones you could do, avoid more regularly, you're going to have better performances, better overall health, better sleep, better recovery, and ideally you get more out of your workouts, your training, and your overall health. All right, now next we're going to go into nutrition tracking, which is why we're all here today. So that first stuff was just about setting up the, our base, our pyramid, so that as we go into nutrition tracking, we have a much better understanding of how we're going to approach our nutrition tracking. And the way I like to break this down is into levels of tracking. So we're going to go through 4 different levels, and you're going to be able to, if you're brand new to this, you may start with level 1. I would always suggest that, get started there. And as you get the habits in place and start to understand more what goes into your nutrients on a daily basis, you can take a step up to the next level, which is going to be a bit more complex. You're going to get more information, or maybe the information is going to be more accurate and get you to more precise goals. So level 1, this is going to be mostly subjective and visual, and it's really looking at your plate. So this is a great starting point for nutrition tracking. It is paying attention to how your plate looks at each meal. Excuse me. For most people, the aim to fill their plate in order to, sorry, for most people, they aim to fill their plate in order to simply be full by the end of the meal. So they're not necessarily looking at what goes into the food. The sole focus is on the volume of food so that by the end of the meal, they feel full. So we want to start recognizing the elements that make up the food on your plate. So making sure to have macro and micronutrient sources with each meal. If you can look at your plate each meal and find whole single ingredient foods that give you a combination of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, you will be off to the races with your nutrition. So if you look at your plate at each meal, this includes, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If we go to that classic timing, we want to have a great combination of proteins that include either red meats, chickens, fish, eggs, or even vegetable sources, a wide variety of vegetables that occupies most of the plate. I would even include your carbohydrates in that section. So whether it's like rice, potato, sweet potato, anything like that can fit in that section. And then healthy fats. That includes oils, nuts, and seeds. So this is level 1. Next, we're going to go into level 2. So level 2 is a bit more objective and visual, and you're going to use your hand as the measuring tool. So this is straight from Precision Nutrition. This is a great tool because you obviously don't have to bring anything with you, and it starts to become a bit more individualized because the amounts are going to be relative to your hand size. So someone who is a much larger individual and has a much larger hand, their protein, vegetable, carb, fat sources are going to be relative versus someone who is much smaller, has a smaller hand. You get the same idea. So the protein, vegetable, carbs, and fat sources will be smaller and more relative to that person's body size. So once you have created the visual habit of seeing the portions of macro and micronutrients on your plate, you have in a sense graduated to this next level. So using your hand to create a more individualized guide for your elements and your portions. So the following portions guide assumes that you're having about 3 to 4 meals in a day. And you notice that instead of counting calories here, you can use your own hand as a portable portion guide, and your palm measures your protein, your fist for vegetables, your cupped hand for carbs, and your thumb for fats. So just as a caveat to this, I would say your protein also includes the width of your hand. So if you look at your hand right now, the palm plus the width, for me, it's about like a 5. If this was a steak, it would be like maybe like a 5-ounce steak. So that would be one portion of protein for me. A fist for vegetables, a cupped hand. So this is like if it's rice or something like that, it's going to be a cooked rice that's going to fit in your cupped hand, and a thumb portion for fats. So if this was like olive oil, for me, this might be like a tablespoon and a half to fill that up. So this is kind of like level 2. Part 2 is using a combination of your hand and your body type. So there are 3 main sort of pillars of body type. It's not to say that you are all the way in one of these categories, but think about it more of like a gradient or a spectrum, and you may fall somewhere along the line between I type, V type, switch for me, and O type. V type there and O type. So Based on your body type, we see a different breakdown of your carbohydrate, protein, and fats. Right at the very top, we see percentages. So for the I body type, it's 55% carbs, 25% proteins, and 20% fats. Now, the reason it leans more into carbohydrates is because this type of person's energy speed is set to high revving, and their tolerance for they tolerate carbs well, and they're generally high energy individuals. So now as we look into the two people at the bottom, we want to have for this person roughly, obviously using again the hands from this one to help determine our portion sizes. So 2 palms of protein, dense foods, 2 fists of vegetables, 3 cupped handfuls of carbs, and 1 thumb of fat and dense foods. And on the female side, it's 1 palm of protein, 1 fist of vegetables, 2 cup handfuls of carbs, and a half thumb of fat dense foods. For the V type, now we start to see the shift in the percentages for carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Obviously, if it's not obvious, this is always going to add up to 100%. So for this person, their body types are designed to be more powerful machines. They tend to be testosterone and growth hormone dominant, and thus they can usually gain muscle and stay lean quite easily. So for this person, you see the protein sources are the same: 2 palms of protein dense foods, 2 fists of vegetables, 2 cupped handfuls of carb dense foods, and 2 thumbs of fat dense foods. And on the female side, again, 1 palm of protein, 1 fist of vegetables, 1 cupped hand of carbs, and 1 thumb of fat dense foods. So we can see where the fat bumped up there and the carbs came down. And then for the O type, this person's energy speed is generally set to what they call idle. They're naturally less active, and they typically have a slower metabolic rate and generally don't tolerate carbs as well. So we just make a slight adjustment again with the percentage breakdown of 25% carbs, 35% proteins, and 40% fats. That is represented again in the portion sizes, but notice that our protein remains about the same: 2 palms of protein, 1 palm for female, 2 fists of veggies, 1 fist of veggies for female, 1 cupped hands of carbs, so we're decreasing that amount there. For the female side, a half cup, and then 3 thumbs of fat versus 2 thumbs of fat for the female side. So we're increasing our fat, using that more as our energy source. We're sort of moderating the carbohydrate sources and keeping protein the same. From here, we're going to get into tracking. So this is now your level 3. We're starting to get into more subjective data, and we're using an app on your phone. So for myself and my clients, I use a combination of MyFitnessPal, which is very easy to use for the most part once you've practiced it a little bit. I use this one because it also integrates into the coaching app that I use and actually gives me a great breakdown of your daily inputs. The way we want to approach tracking is using it as a tool. So I always say the goal with this is to educate about the value of food and how it contributes to your nourishment, to see if you're getting enough quantity to sustain your body's need, so quantity of food. And number 3 is to dial in the quality of your food next, and to show the impact of lower quality foods. I would say the goal is not to become obsessive with numbers, and we don't want to waste your time weighing out every tiny morsel of food. So we're going to go through this in more detail, obviously, but I want to give strategies that are going to be more sustainable when it comes to actually tracking your food, and understanding why we're going to do this is going to make a lot more sense. And I think when it comes down to from before level 1, when we're not even paying attention to our food at all, we're just eating to get full, to starting to pay attention to our food, we're already going to start to see really great results. This next level up is just going to help us do that. Level up, get more dialed in with our food, start to have a better understanding of what we're eating and how it's impacting us, and then make adjustments as we need to. And the adjustments will feel a lot more gradual as we work through this because we have a better understanding of what's working and what is not. So we'll go through almost like a bit of like a setup tutorial for this. If you've never used MyFitnessPal before, you can always come back to this page and walk through it to set it up. So obviously, it's going to take things like your name, your fitness goals, your date of birth, sex, height, weight, activity level, and how quickly you want to lose or gain weight. So once you've inputted that information, MyFitnessPal is going to calculate your calories and your macro targets based on this information. It's going to be pretty good, but with all tracking, it's never perfect, right? So we want to take most of this with a grain of salt and understand that it doesn't have to be exactly on the mark. Just the closer you get to it, obviously, the more likely you're going to have success. So you can adjust your macros to any ratio that you like to accommodate the balance of either a balanced approach, a keto approach, a high protein, or any other diet type. But my suggestion is to start with 40% carbohydrate, 30% protein, and 30% fats. Now you can take this one more step, go back to the body type and see if that is a better fit for you to kind of adjust those percentages to align with your body type. Um, but you can always start very simply with 40% carbohydrate, 30% protein, and 30% fats. So, like I said, MyFitnessPal does a pretty good job of determining your daily calories, but it won't be 100% 100% accurate. And every day will be a bit different for you depending on lots of factors, but especially your activity level. So, just focus on being consistent with this and starting to get the information into the app to see how you're doing and where the adjustments need to come from. So once you've added the desired foods, you will need to select the food quantity under serving size. So select the most appropriate and accurate unit of measurement. So for example, if actually, sorry, I'll break each one of these down before I jump into this. So the first one here, first image is just showing how you add either your food, exercise, water. In the bottom corner, there's a little plus sign. You're going to be able to select the meal that you're adding food for. And you can either use the search bar at the top to look for the food that you're wanting to add in, but it does have this nice barcode feature. I think that's just if you do the subscription, you can use the barcode and actually scan the foods and it will find it a bit more accurately. But if you're just searching the food, you'll find the one that you're looking for and select it. So for example, if I look up an apple, the options for the serving size are small, medium, large, cups, slices, grams, ounces, teaspoons. So some of those options are quite subjective. You know, what I consider a small apple may be different from what someone else considers a small apple. But we're just trying to pick the one that is closest to what you think that food quantity actually is. If there are packages or like your chicken, for example, is a package of 2 and it's 20 ounces, you can assume both are about 10 ounces. So you'll get a general sense of the correct information that will keep leading you in the right direction. So once you've selected your food and the serving size, it will actually show you what the macronutrient breakdown is between carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And you'll start to educate yourself and understand when you put a food in, how does that break down and what is it what you thought it was? So a good example of that is if I put in a tablespoon of peanut butter thinking that it's a good protein source, and I look at the macronutrient breakdown and really see like, wow, this is actually more of a fat source, and I was using it as protein. Now we're starting to understand which quantity and quality of foods we want to choose to help hit our goals more accurately. Same thing could be said for eggs. If we're trying to use that strictly as a protein source and we plug it in and see, wow, there's actually almost 50-50 proteins and fats for this, that might be your fat source in the meal that you're eating. So as you start to see this more frequently, you're going to start to understand how these foods kind of fit into each category. And then as you complete your meal or create your meal, you're going to have a better understanding of what combinations of foods get you as close to your per meal goal as possible. Hang on here, skip ahead. Okay, so a good way to save time with entering meals is to save customized meals. So this way you don't have to enter individual elements of the meal. You can actually preset it and add it as you're having it. So it, this would be something like where you're having maybe the same breakfast or lunch throughout the week if you're doing some meal prepping, rather than each day having to re-add all the elements of that meal. You can actually just save it as a customized meal, select it, and it'll drop right into your breakfast category, for example. And that way you're not having to go through it every day. If the amounts happen to be different at all, you can always adjust them a lot more easily, just by then selecting the food, changing the serving size, and then it will obviously adjust your macronutrient and your calorie breakdown for those different serving sizes. But I find for myself, if I'm having the same thing for breakfast, mostly every day, I will save that, enter it. As we get into the next level, we'll show you how we kind of weigh it out to get the right amounts. So at the end of each day, you'll see a summary of what you've eaten broken down in the elements of nutrition we want to be achieving each day. So the goal is to get as close to your desired goals for each element each day. So when we look at in the nutrients and macros tabs, which you can see just kind of a third of the way down there, right here and here. So we want to check the macro tab as well to see how close you got to your percentage ratio for proteins, carbs, and fats. So if we look at this closely, this individual's goal for the day for protein was 188 grams. They were able to hit 177 grams, and they had 11 grams left. When we go to the carbohydrates, the goal was 300. They were able to achieve 271, which left them 29 grams short. And then if we go look down here at the fats, we see the goal was 117. They hit 128 and were 11 grams over. Now, this I would consider very well done. The amount of times that you get this perfectly on are potentially far and few between, but you're just trying to get close to it. Obviously, you don't want to have like your carbohydrate goal be less than half, but if you're getting up into this like 90% of your goal range, you're doing great. Now, as we go over to the macronutrient tab, we're going to see this pie chart breakdown of the carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And this is accumulative throughout the day. So from the first thing you ate to the very last thing you ate, it's going to adjust this pie chart. And we're just trying to, again, get close to your goals. This is like where we saw at the top of the body types, the percentage breakdown. So depending how we set that, for this individual, we have carbs set at 45%, fat set at 30%, and their protein set at 25. And we could see what they totaled for the day: 47 out of 45, 30 out of 30, and 23 out of 25. Again, this individual, this is a really great job. They're very, very close to what their goals were for the day. And if they can do this consistently day after day, they're going to have a lot of great success with their nutrition. So going now into level 4. So we're getting into objective data here, and this is weighing your food. So you can see with these different levels, we wouldn't necessarily want people to start with weighing their food because we have to have all these other skills and habits built up before we get to this point. So the next level of nutrition tracking is to weigh your food. So the reason I don't like starting with this is because you have to have that good understanding for the ingredients and the elements of food. You should be able to focus on whole single ingredients and avoid sensitivities, multiple ingredient foods, and processed foods. Then you need to work your way through levels 1 to 3 for tracking. If you're doing all of that and if you're doing all of, where am I? If you are doing all of that, you may not need to use level 4 to get the results you are looking for, and it could actually be avoided. So you actually may not ever need to weigh your food if you're doing everything all the way up through level 3 very well. But if you want to be more accurate, you want high performance and health, this will provide you with those higher levels of insight to what you're eating and how it impacts your health and performance. So if we want to be more accurate, more specific, get more specific results, we want to level up to level 4. Spend some time weighing your food so you get a better sense of what a more accurate serving size is. The classic one we see a lot on social media is the sort of tablespoon serving of peanut butter, where someone's just taking a big scoop with a spoon versus actually using a teaspoon and cutting it off at the top. Those are two very different serving sizes. But when we start putting stuff to a plate and weighing it out, you get a really great understanding of what 100 grams of fruit looks like or what 200 grams of rice looks like. And you may not need to do this forever. You may just be in a period of time where you're trying to get to a desired weight. Maybe you have a weight class in the sport that you compete in and you need to really get that dialed in, or you're trying to gain weight and you want to make sure that you're eating enough food and your serving sizes are actually could be a little bit small. Also, if you're not seeing the scale move in the direction you want, that's where we want to get more specific, get better insight, and make sure that we're doing all the right stuff that we need to do. So the tracking itself is the same as level 3. So when we're using this level 4 of weighing food, we're going to use the same principles from level 3. So in your serving size, you will select either grams or ounces. And once you have your dish on the scale, you want to zero it out. I'll show you what that process looks like next so that the weight reads 0. Then add the quantity of food you're going to have in the app and add the amount to your serving size. It will show you a breakdown of the carbs, fats, and proteins, and you should add enough of the food that for the example of protein to get to your per meal and macro goal. So for example, if you're trying to hit 25 grams of protein in that meal, you want to add enough chicken to the point where it matches that amount. So if you're adding multiple ingredients in the same dish, you just simply zero out the scale after you have added each item. So what that looks like, this is if you guys follow me on Instagram, you see this a lot, my typical breakfast. And this is how that process looks when you're putting multiple ingredients into the same dish. So I've got my bowl on the scale in the first image. I zeroed it out so that we see 0 grams at the bottom. I added in my ground beef, which gives me 125 grams. I'm going to plug that into my MyFitnessPal, make sure that it matches the protein goal for me. Then I'm going to zero out the scale again so it shows 0 grams before adding in my eggs, and my eggs total is 180 grams. I'm going to add that into my MyFitnessPal, and that's going to start to show me how my meal breakdown is going to look for those macronutrients. So what is the amount for my carbohydrate, what's the amount for my fats, and what's the amount for my proteins. So next we're going to jump into a bit of meal planning. So the reason you're going to meal prep is to save time and increase your consistency with hitting your per meal and per day goals. So rather than trying to make meals at the very last minute and hoping that it's the right ratio for you, to be more consistent and to save time throughout the week, you can spend the time getting the right amounts. Let's say it's on a Sunday afternoon and that's your best time to do it. You're going to actually have the time to measure everything out, get the right weights, get each meal, your 6 meals for the week ready to go. And this way, that consistency of hitting that pie ratio goes way up. Usually where people fall away from that is when they're trying to figure things out last minute. So either they don't have enough ingredients and elements to go into the food to help them hit their goals, or they're running out to a store last minute and just, even if it's something that's like relatively healthier, it's not necessarily going to be accurate towards your individual goals. So the more prepared you are, the better, the more likely you are going to be to hit your goals. So planning it out with your information. So now that you have, knowing what you need is the first step, and you may need time tracking your meals that you're already eating before you start meal planning. So spending some time to actually go through those stages of, 1 through 4, potentially 4, and starting to see how it actually breaks down for you, where we're starting to see progress. Before we start meal planning, I know most people will begin with meal planning, and I think it is a good thing to do. Obviously, not the pizza in a Tupperware on the side, but starting to put some meals together and being able to look at them the same way that we're looking at our plate to begin with, right? So seeing some carbs, seeing some vegetables, seeing some protein with each meal, we could take the exact same approach that we're doing, with the meals that we're eating. That we're going to do the same thing in our meal prep. So um, if you have a good understanding of these nutrients you need and have figured out the amounts that consistently get you close to your per meal and per day goals, then putting together these meals seems pretty second nature because all we're doing is applying that information and putting it in a Tupperware essentially. So start with a few good recipes or combinations of protein, veggies, fats, and carbs that you know will hit your goal. And you can use levels 1 through 4 approach to achieve this, like we just said. So I would start with like a few different meals that you know are going to help you be successful in hitting these amounts. And then as you either get sick of those meals or you are really consistent with them, then start to branch out and find other combinations that are similar that get you to the same point. So, a classic example for this, like this one on the left here, is maybe like a chicken, broccoli, and veggies, or chicken, broccoli, and rice. If you plug that into MyFitnessPal, maybe that's the perfect ratio for you, and you just have to get the amounts right. And as you branch away from this, which doesn't seem super exciting, but maybe it is for you, maybe you choose something instead like beef and sweet potato and some other type of vegetable with that. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can still taste good. Um, and that's where using things um, like avoiding sauces. Those are going to be like your multiple ingredient foods. Using things that are more like just seasoning, salt, pepper, things like that to make your food taste good. That is going to help you get a lot more close and accurate to your goals. So with all that information, I know we flew through a lot of that stuff, but I hope that starts to give you a good understanding of how to apply the information from the sort of essential elements of nutrients. Those are like proteins, carbs, and fats. Starting to have a better understanding of those food sensitivities and how and what to avoid to make sure that you're getting your best possible results, and then starting to apply the different levels of tracking to pay more and more attention to what you're eating, with the intention of improving the quality and the quantity of your foods that align more directly with what you're trying to achieve, whether it's health related or performance related. I think it's really, really valuable to start taking ownership in the food that you eat. And as much effort as we put into things like training, we need to put more, or at least an equal effort into the things that we're putting into our body to help improve those activities that we really enjoy doing. So I'll wrap up today. We'll open up for if anyone has any questions. You can unmute yourself and ask out loud, or you can throw it in the chat if you have. Okay, over the years, I've used levels 1, 2, 3, tracking the impact. This is dramatic. Eating enough. Okay, Jad, do you mind if I just share this story here? So, Mike says, over the years, I've used levels 1, 2, and 3 for tracking, and the impact of my fitness was dramatic. First, I learned that I wasn't eating enough of the right things. Modifying the intake of things like wine, beer, and sleep were similarly dramatic. I lost weight by eating more of the right things. and the fitness tracking was really easy, and I learned a lot by using it. It became a habit after a few months, and now I just do it once in a while to remind me. And that's really what I'm looking for with this is if it is approached more as a tool, it's going to be something that's more long lasting, and you're going to be have it now as a skill that is going to last you more of a lifetime. And then when you maybe have an event coming up or a trip coming up or a performance or a competition, those might be the opportunities later where you start to dial that information up again to get you even closer to your results. The recording will be sent out by email, and you'll have sort of a link or copy to that. You can consume that at any time. It may also, I haven't decided yet, but it may also be somewhere on the Three Phase Fitness website, and we'll likely have a passcode that you can access the video with. Perfect. So I'll just wrap up because some people are going to watch this separately or on their own time. But if you are interested in nutrition coaching or for either learning more about nutrition, you want to spend time doing almost like just coaching calls to answer questions about nutrition or just to learn more in general, or you want to get a personalized guidance through nutrition right from the very beginning. If you're someone new or you're an athlete who's looking to get more out of your performance, this is a service that I provide in nutrition coaching to help people get more out of all of those elements that I just mentioned, and ultimately to help you achieve your goals faster with less guesswork. So I would also suggest subscribing to our newsletter. This is, I provide lots of helpful tips on there, obviously about nutrition, since that's what we're talking about today, but we'll also have things about strength training, recovery, sleep, just as some examples, and that typically comes out weekly, and you can also subscribe to that through the threephasefitness.ca website. And my last question, which you can either message me separately or in the chat group, is that I'm asking this as a question, if I were to expand this into a course on nutrition tracking, performance nutrition, is this something that you would be interested in learning more about? So you can message me separately if you'd like. But I'm interested in building this out into a longer, maybe like a 5-week course that would go into each of these things in even more detail. But that's just something future planning. So I will sign off today unless anyone else has any more questions. I want to thank you guys all so much for joining today. This is likely something I will do again in the future since it had a pretty good response and people did want to join. But for today, thank you all very much for sitting through this, and I hope you got some information that you can apply to your own health, fitness, and performance goals. That's it. That's all. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.